Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful brand new autumn day. At least it is here in West Michigan in the Enchanted Forest. The leaves are starting to turn beautiful colors. And so the Enchanted Forest looks as though it is festooned for a party. Getting ready to greet Samhain, I'm certain of that, Halloween. It's great to have everybody with me this morning. The chat room is open, and I will go ahead and put the link to the chat room in the Exploring Sacred page there on Facebook. There it is. So please go ahead and join me in the chat room. It's great to be here. Thank you to each and every one of you who has become a follower of my work on Spreaker. I really appreciate that. Good morning, Danielle. It's great to have you in the chat room this morning. And I'm hoping that by the end of the year we can have 100 followers for the Temple Within Radio and Media. It gets all of us some wonderful perks via Spreaker and Deezer and iHeartRadio and all of those places that Spreaker distributes our shows to now. So thank you to all of our listeners around the world. Because of you, the Temple Within Radio and Media radio shows are now broadcast on many platforms out of Spreaker, so thank you all for joining me. Hey, good morning, Corey. It's good to have Cousin Corey in the chat room this morning. So thank you all for joining me. This morning, hey, Jill, I'm so glad you can listen today as well. Oh, pause with a cause. Love that. Jill works for that amazing group of people here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I love how everybody's out there doing their part in the world. At least the people that I know are all out there shining their light and doing their soul's work in different parts or wherever they happen to be, making a difference. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it? Taking your light to wherever it needs to be, wherever it's planted, wherever our soul leads us. And hopefully taking a break on Wednesday mornings here on Spreaker or YouTube or various other places to recharge and rejuvenate. This morning we're going to be talking about intuition and knowing. Two of my favorite subjects in a list of many subjects, intuition and knowing. I happen to believe, good morning, Lori, from the beautiful north of Michigan. It's great to have you in the house as well. Thank you for being here. Intuition and knowing. I believe that each and every one of us is intrinsically coded with or is given, comes to the earth plane, right, with a sense of knowing, a sense of intuition. Some people call it a gut feeling. Some people call it an extrasensory perception. Some people just generally refer to it as the sixth sense. In other words, it's a heightened sensitivity. It's a heightened awareness. Good morning, Kelly Spencer. Are you here in Michigan yet? Your room awaits you, and Kevin. Knowing, intuition. It's really not anything too mystical or too magical. I believe it happens to be something that we can hone. Something that some people, frankly, are just born with. A little more expanded or deepened than others. I think that there are a lot of children right now that are being born or have been born with a very heightened sense of awareness. Years ago, when I met with my spiritual director at the Dominican Center here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Good morning, Marianne. It's good to have you in the chat room from beautiful New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Years ago, when I met with Charmaine, and, she said to me after I went through some testing and some essays that I had to complete, and she and I met, and she said, according to the Catholic canon, you're a sensitive, you're a seer. Just like the mystics have always been. Just as they've always been. She said, the mystics haven't gone anywhere. They've simply modernized. They're modern day. They're out with the people. They're not cloistered in convents so much anymore. The gifts, or the talents, however you like to put it, of the Spirit, intuition, sight, knowing, feeling, sensing, hearing, all of those wonderful spiritual talents, in other words, the ability to feel spirit around us, or the energies around us, if you don't like that word spirit or spiritus. The energy in the ethers, in the spaces between us all. They're alive. They are very much alive. And yes, while many of us are no longer dressed like Teresa of Avila or Teresa of Lisieux or Bernard of Clairvaux, some people are, but most of us are not. We're out there in our modern day mystical bodies picking up on energies from the seen and the unseen world. And of course, discernment is the key. Learning to discern what is ours, what is someone else's information. Is the information good, kind, and loving? Is the information malfeasant? Is it malevolent? Learning to use our intuition in discerning, I think, is one of the greatest gifts that intuition and knowing gives us, is the ability to really understand and define what it is that we're dealing with. Our intuition, our gut feeling, is one of those things that has a language all of its own, and for each and every one of us, it's different. For those of you that are listening, and perhaps when your intuition is kicked up, or it's becoming highly aware, or it's on high alert, maybe you get goosebumps. Maybe your skin crawls or your hair bristles. That is intuition. That's intuition informing our sense of knowing that something is going on. Something in the seen or the unseen realm is in our space. It's communicating something to us. And a lot of people will get the bristle hair on their arms and on their head, and they'll say, oh, and keep moving. For many, such as myself and all of you, in those moments that stop us in our tracks, we just have a gut feeling, an aching maybe in our gut. We might say, oh, my stomach just aches. Just something's going on. I can feel it in my stomach. I can feel it in my heart. I can feel it in my ears. My ears are ringing. Our sense of intuition works with our physical bodies. So it's where the non-physical and the physical meet. Our body, I refer to it as an antenna. It picks up on information from the seen and the unseen worlds at all times. And some of us sit for a minute, stop for a moment, and we pay attention. And we reflect upon what's going on in our body, on our body. All of a sudden becoming aware of a feeling, of a thought, of a song that begins to play in our head. The other day, in Amantha Murphy's 5-day Irish shamanism apprenticeship training here at the school, I was working with one of the women in class, and my intuition kicked up in a fun way. I could hear Stevie Nicks inside my head singing Gypsy. The gypsy that remains. And freedom. And some people may think to themselves, well, I love Stevie Nicks, and so that was floating around in my mind. But when I paid attention to what my intuition and my sense of knowing was giving to me in the way of information, I knew that this beautiful woman that I was sitting with was in need of reclaiming her inner gypsy and the freedom of passion, playfulness, sensuality. The gypsy that remains. And so I didn't just gloss over the fact that one of my favorite songs was floating around in my head, but I paid attention, close attention, and in the scope of everything else that came through in our time together, that song was very important. Our intuition sometimes sparks a memory. And so how does this work? All right, let's talk about a sense of knowing. How does that work? And who's giving us information about what we're supposed to know and remember? Who is that anyway? It's great to have intuition and knowing, but who's supplying the information for that? Well, it can be several sources. Oh, that's good coffee. Paul Newman's Own, with a little bit of pumpkin spice on top with the cream. All right. Well, our higher self, our soul self, is wonderful at trying to inform us at all times. You know, Lori, you might want to think about this and put that away. Kelly Spencer, I think you need to put your attention here today or in this moment. Leave what you're doing right there and walk on over here and look at this. Right? Marianne, we think that you need to focus on this for today. Maybe you need to focus on yourself for today instead of everybody and everything around you. Our higher self, our soul self, will inform us about things that are pertinent to what we are doing during the day or what we should be doing or could be doing that would be more valuable. And of course, we're here on a planet and in an instance of free will. So we could ignore those signals and those signs, or we can pay attention to what the soul self is saying. Well, maybe you should take that class. Maybe you should take violin lessons. Well, honey, I've been thinking about taking violin lessons. You've been thinking about what? Well, I just have this sense that I might enjoy taking some violin lessons. Some fiddle lessons. And the great thing about intuition and knowing is that when the intuition hits and says, Dana, maybe you should take some fiddle lessons. And I think to myself, fiddle lessons? And I sit with it. And my intuition, my inspiration of, hey, I think it might be fun to have some violin and fiddle lessons, all of a sudden becomes a sense of knowing. When you sit with it, it becomes a sense of knowing, you know what? I think there's something to that. And I don't know what it is, but I have a sense of knowing that maybe those fiddle lessons, if nothing else, are going to give me great joy. Maybe they're going to take me away from working 70 hours a week. Maybe it'll make me sit on my hind end and just have some fun for a while. And the next thing you know, you're at a dinner party with neighbors, and one of the neighbors' wives is the head of the Fiddle Society in Lowell, Michigan. Yes, there is a fiddling society in Lowell, Michigan. The sense of intuition feeding into a sense of knowing that something fun would be great leads to conversation with a neighbor that I had never spoken to, who happens to be the head of the Fiddling Society right here in the little burg that I live in. All because I paid attention to a thought, to a song. I was probably listening to Lorena McKennett or something like that and thought to myself, from my higher self, gee, you could do that. And before you know it, Lily shows up with a violin that she no longer uses and says, hey, you can have this violin. It's an astounding thing that happens when we align with the voice that is informing our intuition. So if we're listening to our soul self, somewhere along the line, Jill heard a prompting, correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, that the joy that dogs give you might make a wonderful avocation for work. Right? She loves animals. They bring her joy. She brings them joy. Before long, she's working for Paws with a Cause. Supplying service dogs, training service dogs for those who have disabilities, who are in need of. Listening to the voice sometimes isn't something that is going to inform us of something we want to hear. Oftentimes it's something we need to hear. And so it's really easy to shut the voice off. Well, I don't want to hear that. I already know what I'm doing. right? I'm going to be a bricklayer. I'm not going to work with animals. I would make more as a bricklayer. So I'm just going to ignore that. And have you ever had the instance of where your intuition and knowing keeps knocking on the door until you cannot ignore it any longer? And all of a sudden, you sit and you think for a moment, why does this keep presenting itself? Why does it continue to knock on the window pane? Why? Sometimes it's time to retire. Marianne, it's time to retire. It's time. And some people will work and work and work and work fearful of, well, what happens if I retire and they die on the job, right? Foregoing having some fun in between retirement and a couple of decades of having fun. The intuition and our sense of knowing, Jill is saying you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you're on Facebook and you're friends with Jill, you get to see the amazing photos of the puppies, right? The soul's work, the soul's avocation. Kelly Spencer, it's time to take Mr. Price here. Kelly, you know what? Mr. Price probably needs to entertain this thought, this action. Sometimes our intuition is for the benefit of others, like my cousin Corey reaching out to me to say, hey, I think you and I are related, and I'd like to find out more. And before you know it, a cousin that you never even knew existed is visiting for a week in Michigan while your daughter is giving birth prematurely to your grandson. Right? Astounding. Brilliant. It's magical. This is how magic and alchemy work. This is how it's done. It's an interaction. It's a blending. It's a paying attention. If we believe that all of the elements in the universe are alive, I happen to believe that. I believe that the wind, the sun, the moon, the stars, all of it, the oceans, the rivers, everything is alive with the breath of Creator, with the intelligence of the universal mind. If we believe that to be true, and we believe that even on the subtle levels, our subtle, subconscious, superconscious can communicate with, interact with, this is where magic, and I'm using that term, loosely for our show here today. I'm not talking about magic as a methodology. I'm talking about the wonder of the world. There are so many wonders and miracles. So many wonders and miracles that happen when we are consciously aware. Sometimes our intuition is inspired by angels, angelics. Some people don't like to talk about angels. I love talking about angels. Perhaps it's my Catholic roots. I don't know. In fact, I'm getting ready to release a brand new book, and thank you to those of you around the world who have already pre-ordered your copy. A book of enchantments with the mystic angels of light. A book of enchantments. It is so far, of everything that I've written and created, this book is my favorite creation. Hands down. Co-creation with the artist David Fix. You can order a copy at theschoolofsacredstudies.com on the homepage. Co-creation, alchemy, intuition. Dana, it's time for you to write a book that helps people really co-create deeply with the angelics. Angels are beings of light. Sometimes they anchor light, and sometimes they anchor the dark. That's a class in and of itself. But angelics are messengers. That word angel, angelus. Messengers. Where are they messengers from? If they're delivering messages to and from, where are they delivering them from? Well, sometimes we say from the heavenly realms. What are the heavenly realms? They're the subtle realms. Sometimes they're the realms of pure light, of pure sound, of pure color, of pure silence. And how do they communicate with us? The angels. The angels as beings of light coming forth from the consciousness of the universal mind of creation. They communicate with us through our sense of knowing and intuition. They inspire us to create. I once asked David Fix, David, how do you create the mystic angels? And we are having a new digital deck, and we are having a physical deck in the coming months. How do you do that? And he looked at me and he said, they inspire me. They just tell me how they want to look on the cards in the book. They just let me know, and I just know. I have a sense of knowing when I have it right. What is that sense of knowing? It's a sense of harmony. It's a sense of peacefulness. When we know, and we just know, we are sure. And what we can know, what we're inspired to know, sometimes is not what everybody else is thinking, what everyone else is knowing or positing or editorializing about, but we have a sense of knowing in which we are so sure and solid and sometimes so peaceful and harmonious that even when what we know to be true for ourselves runs against the grain of popular opinion, social media opinion, right? There's a sense of knowing. This is right. This feels right. I need to act upon this. Sometimes the sense of a knowing can send off an alarm. I know this is going to happen and I better get busy on it. You can just feel when something's going to happen. The day that Elise gave birth to Easton, and thank you all for your prayers, by the way. He's up to a whopping 2 pounds and 2 ounces today. His cheeks are actually getting chubby, right? He's now almost 13 inches long. Little bug. Thank you for your prayers for his well-being. Thank you for inviting the angels of light to be with him. But on that day, and Corey, you know this, Todd was diddling around getting himself a new car. Sorry, honey. I knew, and I said to her, I need to get to the hospital. My Yukon was being serviced. He was looking at a new car for himself. I needed my car, or at the very least, I needed his car to get to the hospital. And sure enough, by the time I got to the hospital, it wasn't much longer after that. We had a meeting of the minds of the physicians, the anesthesiologist, all of that. I knew this is the day. I need to get to the hospital. My grandson is coming today. Where did that inspiration come from? Well, it could have been my grandson saying, Grandma, because you need to get here. I'm arriving today. And my mommy and my daddy need you. And I happen to believe it was probably also Easton's angels. Dana, you need to get to the hospital. Some decisions need to be made. And somebody with a clear mind who isn't in labor, premature labor, needs to be there. Somebody needs to be in the calm. Bring your calm. And I listened to that. There have been times like everybody else where I haven't listened. And I wish I would have. Right? Hey, Katie Battle. Hey, Nikki. Yeah, the chubby cheeks, Marianne. Yeah. That's right, Katie. We just know. Sometimes you just know. Whether we're being informed by our guardian angels, our allies, our spirit guides. Spirit guides. Boy, there's a couple of words that throw people off. Always cracks me up when I have somebody who's Catholic say, I don't think that we should be talking about spirit guides. And I say, we've been talking about spirit guides since catechism. We just called them saints. Oh, well, I never thought about that before. Yeah. And other people look askew at Catholics for having saints, those spirit guides called saints, right? But always somewhere along the line we're taught about guides in spirit who help us from the other side. Sometimes they're the ones tapping on the shoulder, saying, you know what, bring your paints back out. Bring out your easel. Nikki, it's time for you to open up your own art studio. I always listen to my intuition anymore, even if I don't like what it's telling me. Especially when I don't particularly like what it's telling me, then I really sit with it for a while. Why am I feeling this way? Who is it that's inspiring me to feel this? Is it myself? Is it an angel? Is it one of my loved ones who's gone home, making their way home to the ancestors? Is it an ancestor? Well, the only way to really know that is to take some time every day. I start my day out that way, and then there are times during the course of the day where I just need to get quiet. Yesterday afternoon, I was having lunch with Amantha Murphy. We went to the Flat River Grill in Lowell. She loves to go there. And we were putting together her shamanic priestessing weekend for 2020, and we were talking about Ireland, a trip to Ireland again in 2020 in the autumn. We got to talking about this subject and the importance of being quiet and really listening. Sometimes the universe, our guides, our higher self, will force us into a time of quiet. Ever had that happen? Where you find yourself in solitude, in a quiet place, or find yourself so bothered by people's endless chatter that you needed to find a place of quiet? Well, anyone who knows me knows that one of the lingering effects of having left brain strokes is that sometimes I literally cannot find words to speak. There aren't any. I can't even open up one of those file drawers that I often go to when I'm speaking to find an appropriate substitute word for a thought I'm thinking. Sometimes I cannot talk, and Todd will look at me and say, "Is it one of those times?" And I'll just nod at him. You know, Kelly, Lily, anyone who knows me knows, Nikki, knows that if I'm quiet, it's not because I'm being rude or not being mindful. It's because there are no words. And I know that those are the times that I need to get quiet on the inside as well. One of the greatest providers of knowing and intuition is our body, the mechanism of our body. Sometimes we just know we need to back up, back off, sit down, and be. Sometimes just taking a walk, go out for a walk, but I don't want to go for a walk, it's raining. Go anyway, put on your rain slicker and your wellies and go take a walk. But it's snowing. Marvelous, the snow is magnificent. Go take a walk. Go to the park. Honor your intuition. It is a sacred, sacred gift, talent, part and parcel of this human journey, as is a sense of knowing. And as I said, not everything that we intuit or that we come to know is going to delight us. Sometimes, right, they say that shit rolls downhill. Sometimes we know that it's going to start rolling and we don't even know how we know. I always say, and Todd gets tired of hearing it, and I know my kids do too, believe me now or believe me later. It's your choice. Believe me now or believe me later. Somebody once asked Todd, does Dana do readings for you? No, I don't do readings for Todd. I learned that that's just not a really good thing in relationship. Every once in a while, I'll be inspired to say something to him, and he can believe me in the moment or not. And sometimes he'll say, God, I should have just believed you when you told me. I'm not saying that I know everything, because I certainly don't, but there are times when I'm inspired with a sense of knowing to say something, to share something. You all know what I'm talking about. You've done it too. Believe me now or believe me later. And sometimes people get really resentful of that. Oh crap, I hate it when she does that, right? Kelly says, I say that all the time. Yeah, where does that come from? The other day in class with Amantha, I was having an influx, a flurry of information coming to me. And I said, it's kind of like those owls from Hogwarts, piling those invitations to Hogwarts, through the mail hole there on Privet Street for Harry Potter, an inundation. Well, we don't always have owls coming with bearing messages in their talons. No. Sometimes it can feel that way. And sometimes, frankly, it is our totem allies, our own animus and anima that delivers a message to us. Beware, look out, watch out. Our own inner animal is always informing us, particularly of those things we need to be wary of or to be aware of. Just like any animal or insect, right? Our own inner animal. We all have one. Always informing us. That's another place. Sometimes we refer to that as Mama Bear. Oh, Mama Bear knows what's going to happen to her babies, right? It's that inner bear. But we, each and every one of us, have an inner animal. That part of us that's primal, that says, look out. Be careful of that person. Don't go there. Keep your mouth shut. Don't participate in that. Don't invite it. It's time to leave. Right? Especially during this time of the year. In the Northern Hemisphere, we call this Samhain, All Hallows, All Saints, All Souls, Halloween. This time of the year, when the days are shorter and the darkness is upon us longer, where we're less distracted by, and therefore the voice of our knowing and our intuition and the sources of both have greater free reign in informing us. Dana, it's time for you to create a course that. Dana, it's time to create a book that. I'm right now beginning, actually quite into the good process of a book that I'm writing called Soul Minding. Soul Minding. And in the course of creating anything that I create, Spirit will be very specific with me. Dana, remember that photograph that Marianne Malika took down there in New Smyrna? That's the photograph that's going to go on the cover of your book. Get a hold of her and ask for permission to have your book wrapped in that photograph. And I did that, didn't I, Marianne? Straight away. I'm mindful of that, consciously aware of that. Jill is saying, this all reminds me of when my dad was put into a nursing home. No one told me that it happened, but I knew in the depths of my soul it had, and I remember crying because I didn't know where he was. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Jill. Sometimes what we receive isn't something that's all rosy and fragrant. Sometimes what we are alerted to can be painful. It can bring something up within us that's difficult comes up for healing. And I'm certain that in all of that, there was something within you that came up that needed to be looked at. Probably many things that we face in those moments. I always say this journey of being human is not for weak in constitution. You have to have a strong constitution to decide from the other side that I'm going to have a human experience. It's not for the faint of heart to be here at all in our sometimes forgetfulness, in this passion play. In this passion play. I often, when I'm at Mass, when I do go to Mass and I look at the stations of the cross that are posted all around the church or the cathedral, I think to myself, that really is synonymous with the human life. Those stained glass windows carry stories not only of the saints, but of our own lives. From birth, baptism in light, walking the path, sometimes crucifixion, resurrection. I once said that to somebody and they got all cranky, right? Their knickers got in a wad. What do you mean you're comparing our life? I said, okay, the next time you go to church, when you're in Mass and you're bored to tears, because we all get bored in Mass, take a look around at those windows. Take a look around at the stations of the cross that are posted around the church and really, really contemplate those pieces and compare those pieces to your own life, and then come back to me and we'll see if your knickers are no longer in a twist. Right? Oh my goodness, a few weeks later she came back and said, you know what? You're right. You are absolutely right. I took a look at those and thought to myself, that also applies to me. I said, they don't call it, Joseph Campbell didn't call it the hero's journey for nothing. And in taking the hero's journey, we have unseen and seen helpers. We often ignore the unseen. And sometimes the unseen helper is our own soul, our own inner anima. Sometimes it is our guardian angels, the saints, allies, totems. Call them what you will. The voice of God. But do we pay attention? And are we willing to pay attention? Because in listening to all the wonderful things that come through, sometimes we are visited by the ghost of Christmas past. The ghost of Christmas yet to come. We have our own Jacob Marley that sometimes comes to challenge us in our own healing and in our own reflection. Do we not? We do. Most oftentimes, the voice of our intuition and knowing is here to remind us that it's important that we shine our light, that we share our gifts and our talents, that we honor ourselves, that we love ourselves, that we are capable, that we are worthy, that our nature is divine. And sometimes that's challenged, and it is challenging. And that in the ultimate end, it isn't what we have, but it is what we give. In the way of smiles, what we give in the way of hugs, in the way of positive words and thoughts. It's what we give from our heart. It's the way that we walk in this world. What do we give in that? As somebody who is a seer, and I've been seeing for, next month it'll be 57 years, and speaking to those on the other side as a sensitive and a seer, no one has ever said to me who's come through, gee, I wish I would have been a little more stingy with my smiles. I wish I would have been a little more stingy with my hugs or with my positivity. That's never happened. The reverse has happened. I wish I would have smiled more, worried less. I wish I would have laughed more and been not so stoic all the time. I wish I would have played more and invited others to play. I wish I would have enjoyed more quiet time alone. All of those things, the way that we give to ourselves and to others, it isn't measured by things. It's measured by our way of being in the world. By our way of being in the world. And with that, everyone, thank you for your being and the way of your being in this world. Thank you for your support of my work at the Temple Within and the Mystic's Heart. I appreciate you. You inspire me. Sometimes I believe that it's all of you that taps me on the shoulder and says, you know, with what you've been given, the gifts that you've been given and the talents you've been given, maybe it's time to create something new that they can enjoy and have fun with and play with on their journey. You inspire me. You inspire me. With that, everyone, thank you for being with me today. Thank you for shining your light as you do. Get out there and do that today, even if it's just shining your own light for yourself today. In a quiet place, in a quiet moment, with your soul, with your guides, with your allies, with your angels. Blessings be, everyone.